for the meat of the presentation. So how do I take advantage of social media? So Reggie, you showed me a lot of stuff that's happening out there, and that's all great, but it seems like it's a lot of work, and you're talking about blogs, and you're talking about check-ins, and I just don't know how this applies. Right? So, okay, well, here's 3 different ways that I want to help you get started. Okay, so 3 things we're going to identify. Number 1, you need to set your social strategy. Now, what that means is you're going to need to pick one, not all, one of these networks, okay? I say not all because if you try to do everything at once, you're going to burn out. It's not going to work. You want to actually be able to spend some time in one given network and then slowly grow up from that if that works. I tend to be in all these, but I wouldn't wish it on any of you. It's a huge time sink. So how do you choose the right channel? It's tough. They're all out there. I don't know how these are different. Well, A, think about the consumer you're trying to target. If you told me it was your sphere, that's the sphere is the one you want to first get connected with in social media. There's one network, period, that I would point you to, and that's Facebook, right? That's because everybody's there. I think it's 750 million. Is that where we're at now? It's just this continual growth. I mean, the meter's just going up so fast, it's hard to comprehend. But with Facebook, obviously, you're going to be able to connect with your spheres. You're going to be able to take advantage of that ambient awareness that I told you about, where your network kind of, they see you out of the corner of their eye through your subtle day-to-day interactions. Now, once you've identified your social strategy and you've picked your one network, you need to come up with a content strategy. So this is the second piece to that. So what does a content strategy look like? Well, there's the 3 C's of social media, and that is create, curate, and consume. Okay, so you're already consuming, not water, not beer, it's content. So every day we read the newspaper, maybe we go to Google and we read other websites. That's the first step. Now what you need to do is begin to pull out the content that you're using in your niche marketing or your sphere marketing or hyperlocal marketing, and you need to share that with your network. So you're going into, if we're going to say we're marketing with our sphere, you're going into Facebook, and now you're sharing that content that you've been reading about, right? You're just starting to share it on a regular basis. Not all at once, and we're going to get into some frequency and timing stats in a minute, but you start to pull out the content that's interesting, and you share it with your network. What that starts to do is it starts to keep you front of mind with your network. And then we want to have a create strategy, and that's where you actually are creating unique content. This is the part that actually starts to set you as the thought leader in any given space. And it's because over time, people get to trust the people they read. If you're honest and trustworthy, I guess that goes for it. But so think about those 3 things and how they work together. You probably see this happening in Facebook all the time, right? You go in there and all these people are sharing content. As consumers, we really don't care where the content came from so much, is just how valuable it is. So I want to have you focus on those 3 things. And the last piece of the 3 tips is to have a distribution strategy. I see all too many people that implement social media in this haphazard way. You really need to think of social media all starting from a hub, okay? And that hub is your website. Because your website or your blog, that's where you can actually convert these consumers into clients, right? That's where you're going to have your lead capture. That's where you're going to have your contact forms. That's where you're going to have your listings, right? So we want to get people back there. So our social media strategy starts with our hub. Now, if you're going to ask me what's the perfect hub, I'm going to tell you it's a WordPress blog, okay? Why WordPress? Well, WordPress is free to get started on, and it's extremely powerful, and 8% of all websites in existence are based off of WordPress. Kind of hard to believe that, but that's true. And 100,000 of the top blogs also are on WordPress. So once you have that set, now you're going to start to think of how you can push that content out into the other networks that you are part of, okay? Now, I'm not telling you to take the content as it stands and share it the same way in every network. That's a big mistake that a lot of people make. You actually want to understand the networks you're sharing to, and you want to repurpose it for that network. So let's just look at that for a second. So if we create a blog post, and now we want to send it into Facebook, what we're going to do is we're going to take the link from that blog post, we're going to go into Facebook on our business page, let's say, and we're going to write a concise synopsis of that blog post. And then we're going to include that link. But it's not the same content they're going to find when they click the link. Make sense? And by the way, we're not putting in a lot of content because people don't like to read a lot in Facebook. Okay? So that's one step. Maybe we're sending over to Twitter. Well, Twitter's got a 140 character text limit, so I surely can't just put my article in there. So that's where you've got to include the link. The link will get shortened by the shortener tool that'll actually allow you to track how many people have clicked through. And then you're going to write something catchy and compelling that's going to make them want to click on that link. Okay? Maybe you've got an email newsletter that goes out. That's where you can take that blog post that you created, or that content from your hub, and you can take it and you can adapt it for an email campaign. Okay? You can use that same content in direct mail, in referral through LinkedIn. Again, it's got a content stream where people can go in and they can share what they're up to. So think about this slide, and make sure that if you start to take part in social media, you have your hub dialed in first. So now we get to the point of the presentation where I show you basically how often you should be sharing this type of content. And we can even talk about the types of content you're going to share, but that's really going to be based off of the people you're trying to get to. But I have some great research here that came from a gentleman named Dan Zarilla, and he is a social media scientist. Did you know they even existed? Pretty cool. I'm telling my son, well, you could be a social media scientist when you grow up. So, okay, basically what we have here is I'm going to take you through Twitter, Facebook, blogging, and email. I'm going to show you some statistics that we've gathered that tell you how often and what you should be sharing. We don't have a lot of data on Google+, because as I mentioned, it's about, 45 days old. So I would say, though, it's a little closer to Facebook in terms of the frequency that you should be updating. But I'll go ahead and tie that in a minute. So here we are with Twitter. Remember, for anyone that doesn't know, that Twitter thing where you always see a little birdie, that's that network where you follow somebody. It's a one-way follow, so essentially I can follow Jeff, but Jeff doesn't have to follow me back. They share content in 140 characters or less, and I can follow as many people as I want. And then I get this stream of content that's everybody I'm following and everybody that's sharing at that given time. The network moves fast, though, okay? So when I say fast, if I share something right now, it could be through the stream within 5 minutes and out and gone, okay? So one of the first questions people ask a lot is, how do I establish authority for myself on Twitter? And it may seem silly, but one of the ways is to use specific terminology of what you do in your profile. And I say this because there was some research, and those that had official type titles, I say official, that's the one, that had titles that made them important in some way or another, tended to have more followers. And what we relate this back to is the fact that we're really giving our followers a reason to follow us. We're telling them who we are. That's all they have to go off a lot of times. So notice this, in social media we kind of laugh, we say you can never call yourself a guru. Turns out, it actually somewhat works. It might be a little icky. I don't call myself a guru, that's kind of funny, but again, you're telling your network that you are good in something, that you specialize in something, and to do that helps them understand why they should be following you. Make sense? So think about that when you're making your profile on Twitter. Now, you can share any time of the day, but when are you going to get the most out of it? That's what a lot of people ask, right? So in Twitter, when we put a tweet out, and that's 140 characters or less, other folks can retweet you. That essentially means they can rebroadcast your tweet into their network. Now, it turns out it's pretty easy to get retweets, but there's certain times when it's a little more difficult. And we're going to call this, there's a philosophy, and it's called Contra competitive timing. And what that means is, well, let me take a step back. If you go to a party, you got a bunch of people there, it's just getting started, and you're having a conversation with somebody, it's going to be a little easier to keep that conversation going than when it gets into the middle of that party, and that party's raging, right? Because when it's going, you've got interferences, you've got a lot of other stuff coming on, and people's attention's not quite as focused on you. So if we focus back to the Twitter network, what happens is in the morning, about 6 a.m. until about 2 p.m., we start to see a huge competition for our attention. Everybody's tweeting. You have less of an opportunity to get retweets in that time period. I mean, people probably won't share your content as much because they're inundated with other content. Make sense? So if you're looking to get your message retweeted, I'd like to have you try the evenings. Go and try, sharing that content at 5, 6 p.m. Wake up at 3 a.m. No, I'm just joking. We won't make you do that. Now, when are people actually clicking on the links that you share on Twitter? So if I told my network about this great resource that I just created on BPOs on my website, when are they going to click through that link the most? Well, and this is by day, what I found fascinating is that the weekends tend to be the highest click-throughs, or at least even out with everything else. You can see the middle of the week was high too, but if you ask people that use Twitter a lot, they stop on Friday. They go Monday to Friday, and the weekends they're off. They take off, unless they're the hardcore Twitter users and they're doing it all the time. But as a business owner, what I would like to tell you to do is continue sharing on the weekends. Okay, it doesn't have to be a lot. But turns out, that going back to this Contra competitive timing, we have less interference on the weekends from all the stimuli, so your message has a better ability to get shared or clicked through. Now, the last Twitter stat that I'm going to share with you is average click-through rate by links per hour. On Twitter, I could either want more followers or I could want more people to click through the link, okay? If you want conversions, meaning you want people to get back to, say, your website, it's better to space out the tweets that you're sharing, okay? So let me give you an example. It's 3 in the afternoon, and I just put up that BPO article I told you about. And now I share that with my network. If I follow that right up with 5 other tweets, the likelihood that folks will click through that link is lower, okay? If I wouldn't have added those other 5 tweets right after, the likelihood they'll click through is higher. Does that make sense? So if you want people to click through, space out your tweets. I feel funny saying that, but that's what you're supposed to do. Does that make sense? And you can see here, as we tweet once, the amount of click-throughs is through the chart, and then as we tweet twice, it goes down, and then it almost flatlines. So that's some interesting data to me. So just to summarize our Twitter stats, make it clear on why people should be following you. If you're looking for people to reshare your content, try times when it's not as busy. Don't stop tweeting on the weekends because of this contra-competitive timing I told you about. And if you're trying to get traffic and convert people back on your own website, getting people to click through those links, don't crowd the tweets. Space them out a little bit. And if you don't care about Twitter, we're done with that part. Now we're on to Facebook.